Hey guys, Godzilla Freak here, and today we're going to be doing our first Pokemon Unite video on this channel. That's public. There's some unlisted ones, but those don't count. Today, we're going to be making a relatively comprehensive, but not too comprehensive for the sake of time, tier list for every single champion in the roster. We will be ranking these in a general way, so we're counting solo and duo and trio and 5-stack and draft and non-draft gameplay. Kind of tough, we're going to try to consider all of it. And just before we start, we're going to have some ground rules here. The way we're going to rank these is we're going to assume the maximal amount of skill expression for both you as the user, your teammates for the most part, though some caveats on that, and your opponents. We're going to be assuming for the most part that everyone is equally and maximally skilled. And then we're also going to be considering all the different matchups at once. It's going to be a bit weird, but you'll see how that works when we get into it. So let's get started. We're going to be going in the tier list order for the sake of randomness, okay? So I'm going to begin here with Venusaur. And I'm joined by my friend, Someone357. And he's going to cover like half the roster, and I'm going to cover the other half based on what we're better at. So let's get started. First off is Venusaur.
So Venusaur is the mon I play out of the both of us. Venusaur, Solar Beam is a good move if you get ahead, and it's what most people play. But personally, I think Petal Dance is a better move as it gives you lower cooldowns, movement speed to make up for your lack of survivability. Yeah, Giga Drain is the best move of Venusaur's kit. Giga Drain heals you and gives you damage reduction, which massively increases the survivability of such a frail mon. And Sludge Bomb is just absolutely worthless, not worth considering.
Next, we're going to go over Gengar. Now, the Gengar is a pretty interesting pick. It recently got a buff in the update, and we're actually going to put it all the way up in the A+ tier. If this was a few months ago, I would have had Gengar much, much lower, but after playing it more recently, it has a very powerful niche. The only moveset that's worth considering is Hex. If you're playing Dream Eater, just play Mimikyu. Shadow Sneak is just way better than Dream Eater, no questions. But Hex is insane. It tank shreds insanely well. You can go up against Lapras, Slowbro, Mamoswine, Trevenant. It beats all of them. It's crazy how powerful Hex is if you can just start spamming it. The invincibility is very strong if you time it perfectly, and Sludge Bomb is also a tank shredding move because it does maximum health % damage, which is insane. And so the way you play Gengar is you just go in. You just go in, you hex, you play the curse item to reduce their healing, because it does take some time to hex. The thing with hex though is it keeps going. It basically works such that, especially once you get your move upgrades and your cooldown reduction, but even before your level up cooldown reduction, if you land Sludge Bombs and you start hexing, it's almost permanent. And then it becomes actually permanent in the sense that they're just always poison. So you just keep hexing and you win. Another thing we have to note with Gengar, don't jungle. The jungle is too slow and too weak. You can get counter jungled and competitive. And if you're just playing randoms, it just takes too long. You get to gank too slowly and it doesn't work that well. But if you lane Gengar, unironically, Lick is gonna do work in lane, and then you get your level 5, you get Hex, and you just start winning the game. Gengar is actually pretty crazy. Next we have Mr. Mime. So we're gonna put Mr. Mime in C tier. For a while, from release, Mr. Mime was crazy. Then they did the thing where they buff it, it became too good, then they nerfed it so much that's worse than it's ever been. And Mime is still in that state where it got over buffed and then over nerfed. But even then, it's still C tier, and the reason for that is because Barrier, especially because Barrier did actually get buffed, is pretty busted, okay? It just puts up a wall on the map, and that's really powerful because there's a lot of ways that you can use your teammates and yourself to really combo with those walls, and you really control what the opponent's doing. And the confusion, the damage, it's no longer there, we get it. The Unite move is like half of what it was before, but just the power of Barrier itself makes Mime, like, okay-ish. Key weaknesses with Mime, though, you're just not that tanky anymore. You can't really pick up kills anymore, especially because there's so much healing in the meta. You do have to play that pure supportive role, whereas you used to be able to carry on Mime, which is a little unfortunate, but it's still a decent support. It's a disruption support, and we'll see more of those as we go on, and it's an okay disruption support. Alright, so next we have Snorlax. And this is going to be our first S tier.
Yes, okay. So, as most people know, Snorlax does have one of the just easily one of the best early games in this game. You have crazy strong boosted. Your move gets you your boosted, and the move itself CCs and does crazy damage for an early game. As well as your second move, Rest, it just gives you more sustainability in your lane. You become a immovable object, which can also get away, as stated earlier with walls from Mr. Mine. Just being an object on the field is still strong. It's not as strong as some that you can place, but it's still an ability that will have its effects during the match. Yeah, and once you get your level 5 power spike with obviously flail, because heavy slime is a garbage move, you just start like two-shotting mons. You don't need crits if you know how the move works, where it's based off your max HP, but it's how low your HP can get to increase your damage. With flail, once you get like half HP, Lax will just do an absurd amount of damage, especially with how strong your boosted is on this mon.
And the other thing to note is play block. The way you play this is when you're on flail and when you're on block, you're just two different characters, and that just works. Just play them both and play them separately. And please run auto attack items. Do not try to stack Snorlax. We've done the math; it doesn't work out. Auto attack items are just so much better. Even if you get max stacked early game, it's not as good as having auto attack items.
So we talked about Lax's early game, mid game, but Lax's late game is still absurdly strong. With your Unite move, you're basically invincible for a good amount of time. Like, you cannot die during Lax's Unite move unless like your opponent has level 15s and like they all just like Unite move you. You're unkillable for most of the game, and that's very effective till you get Flail Plus, which is one of the strongest upgrades to a move possible, where it basically gives Lax the base stat of 30% lifesteal. Now, which mons have 30% lifesteal? Now you have some of the strongest autos in the game. You have crazy fast attack speed. You're so tanky. And then you have an insane boosted. Under Flail, you get increased damage after your plus, your upgrade, and then 30% lifesteal. So you're practically unkillable as you just can mow through an entire team.
It is very technical. You have to. It doesn't seem that technical until you play it. And the reason it's so technical is because you're incentivized to play on low HP, which means you're incentivized to play on the edge, so to speak. And that means you have to do the correct micro dodging, avoid CC, move perfectly. It's actually very technical, but if you pull it off, the payoff is incredible. You become a tank combined with a damage mon with sustain. It is so powerful. But next, we're going to look at Gardevoir.
It has a very mediocre early game. It's not very strong. And then it has a bit of CC. It's mostly there for good damage and annoying Unite move. Far too weak in its early game. Not that much movement. It's slippery and can dodge, but it's too frail and just doesn't do enough with its moves.
Yeah. Alright. Next, we're going to go over to Absol. It's powerful now because of the buffs, but the weaknesses are still there.
The recent buffs do help, where Absol does feel a lot stronger. Your jungle is not even the fastest in the game. Very luck dependent jungle. And then with your pursuits, Sucker Punch, or even like Psycho Cut still works. Does decent damage, but it's the same Absol weaknesses. It's not as bad as what it was before for its late game weaknesses. Its gank is okay, but not the strongest, and it's still very luck dependent while having a still very mediocre Unite move.
Now, if we were to do this with like a randoms setting, they'd be much higher. But remember, we're talking about maximal skill, and you can counter Absol's pursuit by micro flicking to face tank as he pursues you, so it doesn't get the reset, and then fighting it that way. So next, we're going to be looking at Garchomp, which is going to be our next S tier character, and this is Garchomp himself. So there's a whole category of mons that we consider sort of mini Garchomp clones, and a Snorlax is part of that as well. They're actually quite powerful usually. But Garchomp is the original Garchomp, right? It is Garchomp himself. And the real power of Garchomp comes from the boosted auto attack. Once you get 5 stacks on your auto attack, you get lifesteal, you get percent damage. And you also get a ton of range on your auto attack. This is the thing that people don't really consider. You get a huge area of effects. Not exactly straight line range, but you get a massive swipe with every auto attack. And that is extremely powerful because it allows you to hit people that most other auto attacks won't hit, and it also lets you hit multiple targets at once, which will only increase your lifesteal and effective damage. With Garchomp, you can play it in lane, and you can play it in jungle. For the most part, you're going to be playing Dragon Rush, Dragon Claw. That combo is extremely powerful. You can chain that into your Unite moves with X Attack, even with Flash in some weirder situations if you see that in the matchup. You can also play Dig, and you can play Dig Earthquake. The trick there is you want to play that when you realize that your main game plan is not going to work for whatever reason. If you're seeing a lot of counterplay on the opponent's side, your main game plan doesn't seem like it's going to work, that's when you go Dig Earthquake. And the trick there is that Earthquake is better at building stacks, and your bad matchups are matchups where you really can't get to 5 stacks very efficiently. And Dig also gives you defense, which lets you play as something of a tank. You can't even run EXP share in lane with that build. It's a very unorthodox strategy, but it does have functionality. The reason is because in the late game, you still get enough levels if you get kills, and you still get enough damage, and you also do percent damage, which sort of is independent of your scaling, such that you're still able to put in some work late game, even with a terrible item in EXP share, because of the way the Garchomp kit works. And in that case, you play as this tank supportive role, and it seems really awkward, but you do have CC on your moves, and again, you can still tank shred even with all of that. It's a very strange build, but if you do try it, it will work. And for these reasons, Garchomp is a very versatile character. Even though there's a lot of counterplay to Garchomp that you can run into, it can sort of deal with that counterplay in, albeit frustrating and annoying ways. It gets the job done, and that's why it's so solidly an S tier. Alright, next up, we're going to be looking at Lucario, which we are going to put in A tier. Lucario is still a strong character, even after these years, even after nerfs to Steadfast and such, and really the key of its strength is in its 2 moves, Extreme Speed and Bone Rush. I do not recommend playing anything else, as well as its Unite move, which used to be pretty bad, but these days, especially if you know how to use it, the Unite move is quite devastating. It can secure things, and it can pick up a lot of kills. Has a huge area of effect, does a lot of damage. Key advantages of Lucario: your early game's pretty good, and then your mid game's fine. Your late game's fine as well. It's one of the more consistent characters throughout the course of a game. One key component of Lucario that really cannot be underestimated is Bone Rush. The way Bone Rush works is it has what I would call defensive CC. And what I mean by this is instead of having a long duration of CC, which it really doesn't unless you hit it perfectly and it all lands, oftentimes you only stun the opponent for a little bit. But that little bit is not done over the course of a single big stun, which would be good on offense because you stun them out and then you kill them. But it's just like a few really small stuns chained on top of each other, each one only a fraction of a second. This I call defensive CC because if you use this against an opponent's attack, it will still have the effect of canceling that attack. And so it is defensive. It is preventing the opponent from doing something. And it's not the best at setting up your team to just jump them. But it is really good for preventing them from stopping your team's attack or preventing them from catching you out. So it is defensive in that sense. And once you really master the use of Bone Rush, you are able to provide a massive supportive role as the Lucario player. And Lucario is another one of those sort of multi-layer characters where you're not going for a very direct game plan, but you have multiple different plans of attack, and you are this true all-rounder that does a bunch of different things. Because E-Speed is its own thing, right? What does E-Speed do? It goes in, you dash a million times, you kill them, you combo off, you try to fade their CC. What Bone Rush is doing and what E-Speed are doing, though they can be used together to great effect by getting a lot of movement, they can also be used separately to also great effect. And then your Unite move also is its own thing. It's kind of this nuke one-shot, right? Alright, next we have Crustle. And this is going to be another S-tier character. We have a lot of S-tiers in this part of the tier list, it seems.
So, for Crustle, it will be our first S tier that isn't what we consider Garchomp. Obviously, if you know what Crustle does, is more of a generic tank where it has high defenses. But what makes Crustle S tier will have to be Rock Tomb, its wall. Its wall is absurdly strong. It has massive amount of range that makes up for Crustle's low movement speed, while also it just can slow the opponent, obviously cut off the opponent's movement. But at such a low cooldown that you can just constantly do this. You constantly putting destruction, even if Crustle's not directly there, Crustle still is putting up walls, disrupting the opponent. As we stated earlier, we consider walls one of the strongest things in the game, as it's a field hazard. Opponents can't do anything about the field. Once Crustle plays up the wall, it's there. They can't do anything unless they have to waste the moves to get past it already. As such, when Crustle puts up the walls, it can also just cancel moves straight up, as was stated with Lucario's defensive CC. But in Crustle's case, it's like you place on an opponent, it can cancel their move, or you just place it where they're going, and it still cancels their move. Just a field hazard has such presence in the game that it can just bypass characters. As well as Stealth Rock. Stealth Rock is just really strong. It has that bit of slow still, which matches up with Crustle's wall. But what people don't realize, Stealth Rock just does an insane amount of damage. Because it builds up in damage. The more they're in Stealth Rocks, the more they take. Against Crustle, if you're fighting the Crustle straight up, you can't kill it, so then you have to fight it in Stealth Rocks. It'll do a certain amount of damage. You try to leave, you can't. You get walled anyways. Just the amount of control Crustle can have if he's directly fighting, and then you just have your Unite move. What's there to say? You triple in your defensive abilities to CCs everyone that's close by, and then they kill themselves. They fight the Crustle, they cannot win. The Crustle will just kill them with its revenge damage as they try to run around it, and then if they try to just not fight it, you can't. You get walled, you're forced to fight, you get Stealth Rock. And then you're just stuck. You're just stuck. Crustle has full control of the game, and it's just so tanky that it'll never die. So it just permanently is there. In most cases, Crustle will just kill them all by himself anyways.
Yeah, now, one point to make is that Crustle is one of the hardest Pokemon in the game. If you notice, the reason it's so good is because of how much agency you get. And so if you don't know how to use the agency perfectly, you're going to be making mistakes with that agency, and it's not going to end up as well. So it is very challenging. It is extremely difficult to get Crustle to be as good as it could be, but if you do get there, it is truly one of the S tiers in this game. It's unfortunate, but yeah, if you're picking up the game, you probably don't want to try it until you're quite good already, until you already understand most of what the game has to offer. So next, not too much to say about Greninja. It's an ADC. It has some tech. It's not that impressive.
Yeah, it's just a standard ADC. It needs to get ahead, and it does damage once it gets ahead.
Yeah, all its moves are okay, which is kind of interesting. You can kind of get wins with your Unite move, but altogether, not too crazy. Next, we have Talonflame. We're actually going to put Talonflame in A tier, which might be kind of surprising.
Talonflame is still quite a good mon. It has a good jungle. It's quite strong. The safest speedster for the amount of invincibility you can get, or just like how large its range is. With Brave Bird, it's a very large move, very, very long. You can use it from very far away and just quite safe with it. Where you also have a bit of damage reduction on this, so you might not instantly die. Pretty good. And you have Aerial Ace for the invincibility, and then fly. Well, you fly up in the air, and well, nothing can touch you. Very good just to get past, because the amount of defense in this game that people can put up, like in front of Frailmons that are like hard to get to, is just like insane strong. There's the amount of CC and everything, but Talon can just bypass that, which is still a very effective, especially with the amount of Frailmons in this game.
Next we have Charizard. This might be surprising. We're going to put Charizard sort of in the middle of C tier, actually. We know it got buffed recently, and it has an unstoppable Unite move, but the weaknesses are still there. You're still Charizard. It's not that impressive. It's not as good as people seem to think it is. Relatively easy to play. Point and click the opponent that's you're losing to, beat them with your Unite move, use Flare Blitz, get a shield, such and such, put down field hazards with the Fire Blast or whatever you're playing, right? Relatively easy, but the weaknesses are just there, and it's hard to overlook them.
Yeah, its kit is very generic. It has a bit of speed and then has like destruction to the opponent, but it's still just you have to unite move and like hope you win during it.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then play mons that can easily bypass.
And once again, the maximal skill caveat is kicking in here because it's very hard to target a Garchomp or Charizard during its Unite move. It's very hard to hit it if it's flying up in the air, right? The hitbox is weird. But if you really know what you're doing, you can hit it through the Unite move. And so while it's still really strong in that state, it's not unkillable if you perfectly play around it. Next we have Zera, and it's nothing exceptional, but Zera's still pretty good if you know how to use it. You can jungle it and you can lane it, and it's kind of fine-ish either way. Spark is still a really good move, and most people still don't know how to use Spark properly. It's unfortunate. It's been around forever, but the way Spark works, you gotta do the jump, and then you gotta click your auto attack button, and then that'll launch you to the target that's nearest-ish, and then you'll hit them, and it does way more damage if you can chain that properly. It also gives you way more movement range, which does matter. Your Ignite move's still pretty good. You just sort of try to max out your attacks, then go in, blow people up. And it's still a decent pick. You go Discharge Spark. It's one speedster among many, and it's not the most powerful one. I would rather play something like a Gengar. And your early game isn't what it used to be. When Volt Switch was bugged, different story, but nowadays, Zera's okay. It's solid. Take some skill. Next we have Cinderace. Gonna put it right next to Greninja. They have a very similar role, right? Weak early game into a pretty solid late game. You sit back at range. Greninja goes in a bit more. Cinder sits back a bit more. Cinder has a better race secure, but Greninja's Unite move is better at winning a team fight. But as we'll see, we have some other ADC options that we think are superior. But you can still get wins with Cinderace. You can still jungle it to decent effect. It's just not the strongest thing. D tier on this list is actually not that bad. Which brings us to Eldegoss, which we are going to put into B tier. It's still a decent character. It's gotten a lot of nerfs over the years. And all its moves are kind of okay playability right now. You can pick and choose depending on what your team needs. But the core is still there, right? You support your team either with speed or healing, and then you either support them more with stun or shield. And though the numbers on all these things are much lower than they used to be, there aren't that many team support characters. There's a lot of disruption support in this game, actually. And so the actual team buffing support is kind of limited. And Eldegoss is able to do that for your whole team, which is even more limited. There are much more ways to sort of support a single person, even, than to just support the whole team. And so there's some compositions where Eldegoss just really is able to fit in and do the job. And so because of its uniqueness, even though the numbers are not what they used to be, it's still pretty strong. And then next we have Cramorant. So Cramorant is a very powerful mage, and for that reason, we're going to put it all the way up in A tier. It has a really strong early game with Whirlpool, and then Hurricane's incredible after the buff, and Surf is still much better than Dive, though Dive is better than it used to be. You just set up Surf Hurricanes, and if you just land them all perfectly, you just start picking up KOs with Cramorant. Unite move is not what it used to be. These days, like the item, I used to run X attack, but now the Unite move is much worse. You could run Flash, not great. Could run Shedinja but kind of awkward. You could run Potion, but you don't really take that much damage. I've been liking Goal Hack on Cramorant because it allows you to do something independent of your own play. It lets you really just help your teammate, and maybe that's the best item. It's hard to say, I haven't fully decided. But Cramorant is just good. And your late game scaling, although not the best, is not the worst. There's a decent chance that you can pick someone up before they can burst you down with your Unite moves at Ray. If you do a 1-for-1 at Ray after being ahead for the entire early and mid game, that's fine. And if you do have a really good team fight, you're still just a decent mon. I think you're okay late game. And because you're so much better in the early game than most other mons, that brings you up to speed. Especially because you being ahead doesn't just mean you're ahead, it also means that you're able to uplift the whole team, right? And that's a pretty major contribution. As a mage, Cramorant is very good. And then next we have our first F tier on this tier list, Blastoise. Blastoise, how the mighty have fallen. It is just simply not the best pick. Now, Blastoise, there are basically 2.5 movesets. You can run Rapid Spin with either other move, they're both fine-ish, or you can run Hydro Pump Surf. And they both have key weaknesses. Starting with Surf, Surf's range is so big that even if you aim it diagonally or perpendicularly to where you really want to go, it still just moves the opponent so far away that it really messes up your team's combo potential. Even if your team sees it coming, like how are they supposed to go that far? They just can't, right? And so while it does have a lot of CC, the way it applies the CC is very awkward. And if you're on the other moveset, which is Rapid Spin, it's strong, but eventually the Rapid Spin is going to wear off, and it does not have that long of a relative uptime. It's going to be off for quite a while, and during that time, the opponent can just burst you down. The Unite move is a shell of its former self, pun intended, and it just doesn't do the damage it used to. The stun is still pretty nice, but damage is no longer what it used to be. This is just a very nerfed, very neutered character. Next, we have Pikachu, which might be very surprising. We're only going to put Pikachu in B tier.
So Pikachu, after its recent buff, it's now a pretty solid mon, especially with its United. Is solid solid damage with a bit of CC. It's like a mage. It's still most of Pikachu is its United. Low charge, high damage. It's not a very strong United move. But Pikachu still has its fair bit of weaknesses. Most of it is just that Pikachu is really frail. Like, you have your Volt Tackle to try to dodge through some attacks, but it's pretty predictable where you're going to land. Your United move, you're still there. Once you land on the ground with your United move, you can still get hit. So, once Pikachu's initial part of the United move activates, you could just die before most of your United move lands. Which is, a big issue. A pretty big issue. Pikachu is strong, can do a lot of damage, has that bit of CC, decent early game too, but it's extremely frail.
Yeah, that sums it up pretty well. Next we have Fable, which we're actually going to put in A plus tier, right next to Gengar right now. Won't be there forever, but looks cool like that. Clefable is interesting. The pick is actually not Moonlight's. Draining Kiss, Follow Me. Very powerful. If you haven't seen the damage on Draining Kiss, you should look it up. It is crazy. The range gets pretty big too, and the healing is really good, and Magic Guard is a crazy ability to have. Especially, and then you look at the Follow Me shield and the defense. Your defensive capabilities, your just stat capabilities as Clefable are extremely underrated. It is very powerful.
Yeah, and Follow Me has the benefits of, it's kind of like Wiggly's Q Charm, as most people know, just forces the opponent to do an action, which is quite strong, as half the time that just cancels the opponent's action. They can't do anything. They're forced to run up to the Fable, get closer to Draining Kiss, and they could just die. Now, we're not saying the other moveset doesn't work. Moonlight is still, in 5's teams, it can still be quite effective, and you might want to play Gravity for, obviously, counter matchups. Gravity sometimes will just make someone's fold. They can't do much under Gravity, so still pretty good. And Wiggly just has a very strong early game, too. You have a bit of healing, which is fine. It's not the most effective, but it's fine. But Disarming Voice is a very strong move. And if you get level 4 on Draining Kiss set, Draining Kiss, Disarming Voice, you were basically unbeatable at that point. You're so strong for bees. You could just one-shot bees with those two moves, and they can't do it. And if they fight you, well, they can't really beat you.
Yeah, trick for Fable, don't run EXP share, make your teammate run EXP share. This thing's a carry, don't get it twisted, this thing's crazy. Next we have Ninetales, which isn't the most interesting thing. I would say it's a worse mage than Cram on the Avalanche Blizzard set for sure. And then you could run Aurora Veil as well. And Aurora Veil's pretty good as a supportive move. Not the most interesting thing, but you are this interesting ADC with some defensive abilities as well. It has a niche. Has some good CC.
A bit of defenses, a bit of CC. decent damage, a bit of healing, but like Aurora has the real capability is that it can also help your teammates as well. Well, it gives you your defenses during Aurora, but it also can improve your teammates' defenses, which is quite effective in fights, while also you're still giving your teammate that bit of support, CC support. You have good range on your autos, flashes. It's pretty good.
Alright, next we have one of the best mons in the game, another S tier, Wigglytuff.
Now, we said Crostal was hard, but Crostal's not impossible. Wiggly, this one's a bit harder. You play Rollout. Now, what basically no one knows, Rollout is one of the best moves in this game. You don't realize, but Rollout gives Wiggly just, it's invincible during Rollout. It cannot be stopped. It has infinite shields and CCs. You can do this 6 times off bounces. It can reset your moves, and it still does solid damage. Now, like, it's not the craziest damage, but if you're hitting a move 6 times, it's still 6 moves. Not many mons can do 6 moves at once. Now, to effectively use Rollout is absurdly difficult. You have to know the entire map placement. You have to know how the walls work. And you just probably need to predict about like 10 seconds into the future of how your opponent's going to move by the time you get there. Because the move has to draw out for 6 moves. So, yeah, it's basically going to be impossible. The fastest, tankiest, you have CC, you are just the strongest in those categories during rollout. It's absurd. Now, rollout does have a long cooldown. That's why you have to make up with by using effective rollouts consistently. Now, this is a level 4 move, so you have to do this basically since the beginning of the match. For 8 minutes, you have to use the most effective rollouts you can. Now, rollout does have the benefit where you just put in between 2 walls. It's still strong. It's still strong in between just 2 walls. They can't really run past you. You're basically a field hazard at that point. But to use it effectively with drawn-out rollouts with perfect distance, you could literally travel across the map as an invincible CC mon. Literally can go through an entire jungle. Now, that's just the main part of Wiggly. Wiggly does have also the most annoying ability in the game, Cute Charm. Yeah, if they hit you, they stop playing the game, and it's every 10 seconds. So, if you can survive with rollout, then your Cute Charm is even better. And you're now faster, and you just disrupt your opponent constantly. You can Cute Charm, go invincible for 10 seconds, and then get on Cute Charm, and keep doing this, and it's a dumb ability. It just stops the opponent from playing. Literally against their will, as the ability description. And you have decent damage with Double Slap. I would say Double Slap is better than Dazzling. It's just too slow. For a CC move, it just happens too slow. They can easily move out of it before it happens. Your United move isn't what it used to be. Not at all. It's a lot weaker. Its stats are so low. But still has the benefit of your entire team has a full heal, a bit of shield, a bit of survivability. So it's not the worst. It doesn't do too much. But with a 5-stack, you can use it more effectively. Wiggly's early game is still, I would say, still one of the strongest. It has Pound, does good damage, very good damage, and you have a mini rollout. Well, the mini rollout still CCs, shield, and still resets cooldown. Having 2 back-to-back pounds can practically kill most camps. It's very strong for its secure and still tanky early game. Bit of CC has everything. Just has everything.
Yeah. Wiggly is one of the most complicated and interesting characters in this whole game. It's great. So, now you have Slowbro, which is not very interesting. I mean, you can play Scald or Serve, and you can stun, you can heal. You are pretty hard to kill, but everyone can ignore you, so it's It's not the strongest thing. Your knife was
You
pretty
can tell
good.
it.
Your knife was pretty good. That's about it.
Yeah, the United move just forces one out of the fight, but the team needs to capitalize on that. With 5 stacks, it's doable, but then you still also are out of the fight, so. But it does just get rid of the carry, which is not bad. And telekinesis, you can technically force people to like give a shit about you, but telekinesis is just not that strong anyway. It's annoying, but it's still not that strong.
Yeah. Next we have Machamp. Not what it used to be. This character is just it's just not that good anymore. The stats aren't there. There are some times where Machamp pops off, but yeah, submission's alright. Cross chop can get strong. Your knife move's okay, but it just doesn't compare.
Yeah, it's just your stats are too low. You can no longer just like tank through hits, even if you can ignore like CC and everything. Just can't tank the hits anymore. Too frail. You have that bit of CC, but not very much with your long cooldowns. And yeah, you're just damage is too low. You can do damage, but still just a bit too low. I mean, 9 move takes forever. Just not that strong.
Blissey is in a similar boat to Eldegoss, but instead of affecting your whole team, you sort of hyper support one guy. And you can run Safeguard, Helping Hand sometimes if the matchup really demands a Safeguard. And Safeguard just auto-wins some matchups, which is frustrating for the opponent, so good for you. And then Egg Bomb is an okay enough move with Soft Build. Your Night move's still okay-ish, though it's not as good as it used to be. I mean, it has a niche, and that for that reason it's in B tier, even though the numbers aren't quite there anymore. We have Mamoswine. Mamoswine is another S tier. It is just crazy. Mamoswine, you are so tanky with thick fat, and then if you get your attack weights in, you do a lot of damage. Icicle Crash Earthquake is the moveset of choice here, which is a little weird. Didn't caught on very late. Did take some buffs to Earthquake, I believe, but it is very good. The way you can use it is quite multi-layered. You can Earthquake and then Crash. Usually you Crash and then Quake, break the Crash, and then start killing. You can also do some weirder plays where you can bluff Crash the wrong direction and then pre-cast Quake in a different direction to predict the opponent's movement as reacting to your bluff and then catch them that way. The reason all this works is because Earthquake is crazy. It stuns them for a ridiculous duration. I think it's 1.5 seconds. It is an insane duration. And not only that, it also pulls them in. It moves the opponent and it stuns them. It is so powerful. The range isn't that big, but the area of effect after you land it, right? The range is how far you can move when you're jumping, but then the area of effect subsequent to that is incredibly large. Your Night move's fine, gives you a shield. Your early game is obviously insane with Icicle Spear and Tackle, both of which do a fair amount of damage and then have a lot of CC built in. Your auto attack also has CC from level 1. It all comes together and you become a ridiculously reliable and powerful disruption tank. And for that reason, you are one of the best disruption mons, period, alongside Wigglytuff and Crustle to an extent. You are just able to disrupt the opponent. And disruption, when combined with power especially, is incredibly strong. It is able to really take over games. Next we have Sylveon, which it's another A tier character, right?
Yeah, Sylveon is strong. You'd say even with the recent buffs to Draining Kiss is now usable. It used to be completely unusable. It's now usable. The main move is still Mystical Fire. I know people thought it would be Hyper Voice with the change, but the Hyper Voice change has made it obsolete. It's so bad now. It's not wider, but
nerf, yeah.
It's not wider, but also damage went down, and like your range went down. It's not very good now. Like you could say it helped a bit, but it really was just a nerf to Hyper Voice. It's really bad now. It's just damage isn't even there anymore, and then its range is now. You can't even effectively use it all. It's just not very good compared to Mystical Fire. Mystical Fire is a very good move. It gives you movement speed, like constant movement speed, so you can just dodge a lot of hits. It does decent damage, even nerfs the opponent's damage, just very strong. And then your other two moves, Draining Kiss or Calm Mind, literally phases a single hit. Now, that could say that's not very effective when there's like so many attacks, but just being phased, one Unite move could like just change the game completely. Like, Calm Mind may have a bit of a long cooldown. It does have a decent duration. It gives you a bit of shield food, more damage, more defense stats. Still a good move for that. And even just phasing one hit could be all that matters. You face that one CC move, you still play. Like, it's very strong still. While Draining Kiss, on the other hand, gives Sylveon more damage, gives it healing for sustain to survive like a bunch of smaller hits, more chip damage is very ineffective against Draining Kiss. And then you have that 50% slow for each time one of the Kiss hits. They're just slow for so long. It's now a pretty solid move. Now you can just weigh them between matchups. It kind of matchup dependent move, and your move, it's not bad. It can basically heal you to full HP and does like okay damage. So Sylveon's pretty good in all those aspects. Its early game is one of its weaker sides. It's an EV. They generally don't have very good early games. Just what you expect, I guess.
Yeah. Alright, Greedent used to be the best Pokemon of all time, arguably. Like, there are some other candidates for kind of like original Wigglytuff, which no one ever figured out before it got nerfed, some such, right, with crits and all that. But Greedent is no longer that good at all.
Yeah, Greedent's more just, it's a nuisance as a tank. It's still hard to kill, but doesn't do anything. Yeah, it's supposed to do damage, but it even doesn't have that high of damage. I guess more DPS, but then like it's not very good. And then it's tanky, but it has a decent amount of movement. That's why most people just use it to annoy the opponent in the jungle or something. It's just annoying, but it doesn't do that much damage. Its CC is not very good, practically non-existent. And your United is just no longer as strong.
What do you say?
Your stats aren't there.
Alright, Decidueye is actually a pretty good ADC. It's one of the best.
Yeah, either your arrow or razor. The razor leaf you can just spread through multiple targets or just like destroy one target. It's quite strong autos. It still, once it gets its stacks up with razor, it can do a bunch of damage with that. Arrow is, well, it's a long range move. It has its uses. The way I would use arrow is just not focus on it at all. It's just a move. You have a move. You have 3 of them. You can use it. Mostly Decidueye, it's just auto attacks. It doesn't need Razor Leaf for good autos. And arrow is just like, it's a decent move without hyper focusing its damage. It's slow. It has the range to, if they try to run away from your auto attacks. And now if you don't hyper focus damage, you can actually use its plus effect, which increases damage the lower health the opponent is, which that doesn't mean much on a like range move that just wants to kill them. But if you don't have the damage, increasing its damage is fine. It does decent damage now. It's fine. Leaf Storm is just annoying. It's not very good. It has too long of a cooldown. You don't have speed. I wouldn't say it's very worth it. And then Shadow Sneak, where you get your speed, it can find people in bushes. That matters to keep you safe. It just decreases the defense by like half, like more than half. I think on its plus, it's like 80%. With that amount of defense lower, you can just die anyways.
Yeah, the real trick for Decidueye is to just focus on your auto attacks no matter what, and then you're chilling. And Arrow actually becomes much better when you're not relying on Arrow and you still have really good auto attacks. Play auto attack items, please. Dragonite, we're gonna actually put it in C tier, or yeah, it's like actually decent. Weird. It's another Garchomp clone. It's one of the more different Garchomp clones, though. It has more gimmicks.
Yeah, it does have more gimmicks. Its gimmicks are okay. Outrage is quite strong for what it does. you increase your attack speed and just infinite CC chain someone and they die. You basically can't beat Dragonite once it starts going on. It'll just die to its auto attacks. And Hyper Beam does still have its secure range. It's still an okay move. Outrage is a bit better. It actually gives Dragonite like the ability to just win fights. Dragonite the king of 1v1s. It's really hard to be in a 1v1 once it just CC chains you. Yeah, and then Dragon Dance does give you a bit more damage, like attack speed, movement speed. It does do that. I would say Extreme Speed's a bit better because it gives you more tankiness, a bit of CC, and reactivates multi-scale, which is very good because multi-scale just reduces damage by 30% for like 2.5 seconds, 3 seconds. That's still really good on a bruiser like Dragonite, where if there's multiple people, you can win the 1v1s, but multiple people is where you struggle at. And Extreme Speed can get past some CC, which helps Dragonite a lot with tanky. Dragonite's not that good, mediocre early game. It can win with 1v1s, but other than that, it's whatever. And then the Unite move is now worthless. It's basically done.
Yeah. Serena is, it's not there anymore. It recently got a bug fix, apparently, which made it so you can no longer hit unstoppable targets with your Unite move. We thought it was a feature, but apparently that was a bug. Classic Unite. And now it just really has nothing going for it. It's very unfortunate.
Yeah, it used to be able to do, like, something, like, to Charizard, just, like, ruin its Unite move. Now it doesn't even do that, Charizard is very prominent in the meta for like ranked and everything. It's just a prominent mon. So now that you don't even beat that, it's kind of like, what are you playing Serena for? You don't have enough healing anymore. You don't have enough damage anymore. You could play Grassy Glide for CC, but then you lose all your movement because it literally goes backwards. So it's like the fakest back in the game. Gives you a bit of tank, but it's not that good. And then Chop Kick, too big. It has massive area. And, like, I guess it has decent range for a dash. It's not the fastest dash, so it's not that good. It can slow, but it doesn't do anything after than that. Like, makes you fast, I guess, but it's not that strong. Yeah. And now with the Unite move nerf against unstoppability, it doesn't even do that. Unite move is still strong, but other than that, it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, run Energy Amp, you'll get some one-shots, but not enough. Trevenant. I mean, Trevenant's just really good, actually. You run Curse Pain Split. Do not run Woodhammer. Woodhammer's kill kind of fine. Do not run Horn Leech. That move is terrible. He just pushes the opponents so far away from everything that's happening. What's the point? Why would you do that?
You, like, push them back. It's also, like, what's the point? Like, you're already fighting on top of them, and you push them back into your team. And they now have the opportunity to approach you because your tank is no longer in front. So then it's like...
Yeah, you've beaten that player, but what about the rest of your team? What about the rest of the opponents?
Horn Leech is just Trev's worst move. It doesn't do anything. Like, you can sort of, like, CC someone out of fight, CC chain. Like, if you hit multiple people, you hit multiple people, but you could say, oh, you use it for the healing. Yeah, its healing is, like, not even close to what Pain Split can provide. Woodhammer Curse... It's not actually that big of a difference. There's some benefits to Woodhammer. CC, it's okay. It can CC. It disrupts the opponent, moves them a bit. It's okay. Curse is stronger, does continuous chips, slows, and, like, Trev wants to do its autos. That's the problem with Woodhammer. Woodhammer, you're using a move which Trev doesn't really like. Trev rather just have its hands free doing auto attacks. As what most people don't know, like, completely at all, X-Attack Trev heals basically more than Potion, while also doing more damage. I think basically not a single person knows this, but X-Attack is actually very effective on Trev. Your boosted heals you a lot. And with the amount of boosted you can get during X-Attack, your healing is quite good. You have very good healing with your ability. It's better than Potion. And then with Pain Split on top, because Pain Split is also a move that doesn't waste time with an animation. It just does damage to the opponent. You could literally just kill, like, Reggies to full heal. you do it on the opponent, it'll heal you back to full too. The amount of healing you can do while also dealing damage, while also making up for Chev's lack of movement speed, is just really strong. Whoever you pain split, they can't fight Trev. It's basically impossible to beat a Trev that's pain splitting you if you're like a melee mon. You don't stand much of a chance with Curse, pain split, Trev's insanely good autos. You have a solid Unite move. CCs slows them, but its very effectiveness is that it increases the power of your autos. Now, what does Woodhammer and Hornage do? Not give you autos, but now if you have Curse Pain Split during your United Move autos, you're basically unkillable. You have absurd amount of healing now because it increases the healing. You have Shield, and then you're getting Pain Split Curse.
Play for auto attacks. They're very good.
Trev is an Automon.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
Now, we have an S- here. It's a very weird tier, right? What's going in S-? Literally only one character is an S-, and that is the ultimate weirdo, the counter pick supreme, Aegislash.
Aegislash is just that, it's really that jack of all trades mon, but it literally has every trait. Like, it has two forms for defense and offense. It has basically infinite dashes that give it invincibility and chase. It has CC on its moves as damage. It has literally a shield that can also CC and gives you unstoppability, gives you shield. It just truly does have like basically everything in this game. And now most of the time they say jack of all trades doesn't really work, but Aegislash makes it work because it does them all well. Shadow Claw, which its main move, Sacred Sword, is awful. Garbage move. Why would you play a move that has a weird range? Doesn't really do that much damage. It can ignore defense for your boosted, but like that's about it. It's not very strong, and it has a longer cooldown compared to Shadow Claw, which CCs, gives you multiple hits for your stats, and then also it has one of the rare features that were in the game before. It has a crit move. Not many mons have a crit move. Aegislash does have. It has every trait. It can crit on a move while also increasing its crit rate, which is very strong on crit Aegislash. You have a move that crits. You're chasing autos crit. Aegislash can just crit the opponent down and does a ton of damage because crits are like the strongest thing in this game. The amount of damage increase from crits is absurd. While still being a tanky mon that has still CC from both its moves, Bodyguard or Shadow Claw, slow, tank, it just destructs the opponent like that. It doesn't have the best stats on both. It does have that mid stats to keep up with both its defense and offense, but it's not terrible still. It's not in the middle because it switches forms. And your Unite solid. It's not the greatest Unite, but it has a bit of secure. It has decent secure, decent range on the secure, and like it's not very bad. You're unstoppable during the move, and you can secure. It doesn't have the longest of cooldowns, while still having the entire Aegislash kit, which is pretty good.
A very important thing is that if you're in draft, there's a lot of things that Aegislash just counters really hard with Wide Guard, and then so you draft for that, and you kind of just win.
I would say Aegislash has practically the strongest gank in the game. Now, most people wouldn't think so, but you have to think. You're coming out at level 5, even if it's a bit slow, it's not that slow, and you're just coming in with a move that crits. With you already get your crit rate at Doublade. Yeah, 5%. You play crit items, and then Shadow Claw. You land it on their lane. They're CC'd, they lose all their HP. You crit on a move, it can just kill them.
Alright, next up we have Hoopa. And it's going up here as well. A+ here for Hoopa. Trick did get nerfed recently, but as it turns out, the nerf isn't enough. It's still Hoopa. It's still really good.
We didn't talk about this Trick. After the nerfs, its life steal got a lot worse, which we thought it was a bigger deal. It still is quite big. It makes Hoopa a lot worse than what it used to. But it's still Trick. You still get a bunch of movement speed. You can give it to 2 people, which is really good. It gives them shield. it still gives the bit of life steal. Not a lot, but it still gives them that. And then it gives them the ring. The ring is very important with how it literally lasts as long as Trick does. Now you think, oh, what's the point? You're gonna spam Phantom Force. Yeah, just use Shadow Ball. Why would you use Phantom Force with like Trick? Now Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball is absurdly good with Trick. Can hit multiple people, flows them, lower special defense, and it CCs them for like 0.8 seconds. It CCs them for a good amount of time. It may not be the longest CC, but the amount of agency it has on that CC, because you use it not from the Hoopla's perspective as a support. You're not using it from the back. Well, obviously you can. The point of the support is that you go in with your carry or whoever you're supporting. The support will always have a delay on its move, but Shadow Ball has no delay because you're using it from your teammate. As such, you can give your teammate whatever it needs at that point because of Trick. You're no longer playing from your side, you're playing it from your teammate. Now, this gets really hard when your teammate's like off the screen and you have to do something about it. If you're good enough on Hoopa, you can just support your teammate, stay just in range, use Shadow Ball properly, you're giving your teammate CC. Now, I'm not saying this is very easy. Hoopa, I would say, is one of the hardest ones as well, because you're no longer playing it from what's on your screen. You have to play on a completely different screen and guess what's happening. Your teammate will appreciate it a lot. Whatever your carry needs, because not every carry will have everything. Not every carry can CC lock them down, do enough damage, or even slow the opponent. But Hoopa can do that to multiple people. It's just very strong while still giving them the benefits of Trick with its movement speed, shield. Now, Hole does have the benefit of 5 stats. Just 5 stats. Once you can communicate, you can get Hole to work. Hyperspace Hole, it's not that bad in 5 stats. But it has a lot of issues in Soul. It's practically not. It just disrupts your team. It doesn't do anything. And you have decent early game. You have that CC early game. Bit of damage. It's okay. It's pretty good, actually. Magician is what really can carry you in the game. Because why would you use Magician in a situation where your teammate could die or it's not very effective when you can just make your opponents always weaker? See, most people don't do this, but you just spam Magicians when Citrus is off, your opponent literally is playing on permanent half the amount of Citrus. So now your teammate won't get into desperate situations, while you can always just place the Citrus on your goal. Most people don't do this. They think Magician emergency move, you use it when you're desperate, but you can also just make the opponent weaker. Hoopa has one of the greatest Unite moves, teleports your entire team. Now, it is predictable, but that's why you have the Hoopa Unbound, which most Hoopa don't realize is very strong. You can CC, you can literally just start killing people, and you have like 40% more HP. You're unkillable. So you just defend your portal, or you place it away, let your teammates come in. It's very strong. It just gives your team so much more movement, and it's good in solos or top staff.
Alright, next we have Duraludon, which is probably going to be one of the biggest divergences from the consensus tier list you'll see anywhere else. Duraludon's very good. It is one of the best ADCs in the game. You play Flash Cannon, do not play Dragon Pulse. That move just does not work. It takes too much setup, you can't land enough hits. And you play Stealth Rocks. Dragon Tail's still okay, but after all the buffs, Stealth Rocks is just really good. People don't quite understand it that well. It immobilizes the opponent. You know how good that is? And you can place it on yourself, so when you get jumped, they get immobilized, and you have so much damage with Flash Cannon and CC training with Start of Flash Cannon that you can actually just kill a speedster that's on you. It is terrifying how much damage Duraludon gets. But yeah, the trick is, you go in, you play hard, you use all the range you can with Flash Cannon, you just dump out really big auto attacks, and you hope it kills. And you feel control with Stealth Rocks, and you try to blow people up with your Night move. You're a damage mon, and it is so much damage that it just works. And it is so much range. You have a ton of weaknesses. You have to stand still with Flash Cannon, obviously, so you risk getting targeted by some very annoying things like opposing Stealth Rocks or Thunders and whatnot. But you can cancel it, so you gotta play it intelligently. Gotta know when you cancel Flash Cannon. A lot of the times you're only gonna do like 1 or 2 shots with Flash Cannon before you have to cancel it and reposition yourself. But Duraludon is powerful enough that all of that is worth it. And then next we have Azumarill, which is also an A-tier Pokemon. Azumarill is pretty strong. It takes some skill, but If you use it right, crits are good. Crits are very good.
Yeah, even with weaker crits, you can make up with a bit of skill, which most people don't want to play because they think you don't get the benefit of the increased crit hit modifier, but you just increase your crit damage, just 12% more damage. Not many items can do that. And you have the benefit of all your moves being auto attacks as well, which can benefit from auto items. You're fast, you're sticky with play rough while also being slippery. You can move during your Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail, I would say, is far better than Whirlpool as it gives you more control of what you're going for. It gives you range. Because you need a lot of control to make sure you single out, like in team fights, if you can single out one person, they're dead. You do so much damage to a single person. It gives you healing. Gives you enough healing while fighting that one person. It's very strong. And then you have your United, which isn't the strongest, but it does give you your benefit of pacing, a bit of damage, a bit of shield. It does help. It's not the greatest United, but it helps with your already very strong kit for speed, damage. Just crits are really, really strong in this game. Also, you have your life steal. Azu has a lot going for it.
After this, we have Espeon, which has some notable advantages, has some weaknesses as well, but if you ever look at Espeon's profile in UniteDB, it is a giant wall of text on every move. Most of those words are inconsequential, but sometimes they matter, and it does a lot while seemingly doing very little.
It is the only EV with a good early game. Swift on EV is pretty good for securing. Growl's like not even that bad. It slows, does a bit of damage, sure hit, not bad. Size Shock or Sword are pretty effective moves. Size Shock, you need to be able to aim it. It's not that difficult, but it's very small move. It does give you CC, decent damage. Reset off Future Sight, even though Future Sight I would say is the worst move on Espeon. We'll get to that a bit later. Third Power, no skill on your aiming. It does slow the opponent. You don't need to aim it at all, which helps a lot with mons like Charizard. You have movement to dodge. It is a strong move. It can also heal you a bit. It's not bad. Store Power, its benefit is that it's easy, pretty big. It's very effective with monsters that are trying to dodge it, as they basically can't. And then Future Sight and Psybeam. Yeah, Future Sight is worthless. It does basically nothing. So it may be a wall of text, but it's literally a wall of text of nothing. Psybeam, on the other hand, is very strong. It can do a surprising amount of damage for what I don't think anyone knows about. If it hits the tank, it does percent damage from the tank's HP as it bounces. So if you hit a tank with like 8k HP, 6% of that going to frail mons, they're losing half their health. It's pretty wide actually. And it can do solid damage because it bounces. It can just carry itself through and hit multiple people. It's very strong. It has good damage. It doesn't have that long of cooldown. And then your Unite move is whatever. It's a general EV, and it can slow them down. It goes around the EV, shoves them. You can get like a small combo with Espeon. That's about it.
Yeah, and then next, Delphox is another mage. And I have like a template tier list I'm going off of, but I think it's actually too low on that one, so we're bringing higher, top of B tier.
Yeah, Delphox is a pretty strong. It doesn't have the strongest early game a mage would want, but it does have a bit of secure. You most of the time probably play like Fire Blast. Missile Fire is good if you want to play heavy CC, but it's just too small, and no one's playing Flame Charged Missile Fire again. It wasn't very good, and there's no point. Missile Fire gives you less cooldowns, but it's just too small and doesn't do that much damage. Fire Blast, on the other hand, can actually kill people, does very good damage, it's very wide. You could say it's a bit slow, but if you just use it well enough, it's not very hard, especially when you have Fire Spin. Fire Spin is a very good CC move. You can displace the opponent, place them where you want them, move them back into stuff, and it chases. It can damage as well while chasing, so even running away isn't always that effective. One of Delphox's main point is its Unite move. Very short cooldown, and it just reduces healing, which can be a major factor in the matchup. Reduces healing, slows, does good damage. It's very, very large. And with Fire Spins as well, you can force them back in. Delphox is a solid kit. They will have the greatest amount of damage with Fire Blast. long cooldown Fire Spin. Fire Spin is also dodgeable, and its early game is, in general, not the best, but it's okay.
So next we have Glaceon, which, to give us some context, we've had this thing in F tier, but like 2 nerfs ago, okay? So and it got nerfed more after already being in F tier. So this is the single worst character in the entire game. The problem with Glaceon is that you have a lot of damage over a very long period of time. And what that translates to is your DPS, your damage per second, being extremely low, extremely terrible. You can do a lot of damage, but it's all spread out. It's pretty much continuous chip damage. And the problem with that is that the opponent can just shrug off the chip damage and kill you or get a shield or heal it off. This thing just doesn't kill. Your Unite move doesn't give you any burst at all. It gives you movement, and then you'd still get crystals back, but so much fewer than you used to. It's really not anything to write home about.
Basically not a move anymore.
Your Unite move sucks. It's not a viable Unite move. Your early game is pretty bad. You can jungle, you can play Icy Wind, and it's cute. Freeze Dry can CC a little bit-ish, kinda. But your damage is just not there. Your damage is just not there. And while if you were a different mod, maybe that's fine, but you really don't have any supportive options. You really don't have any defensive options. You really don't have the best movement. So all you have is damage, and your damage sucks. Your damage sucks. It's not enough. It just doesn't work. It's just non-functional. Let's move on. Buzzwole comes next, and we're actually going to put Buzzwole even after some very drastic nerfs in A tier, because as it turns out, the nerfs don't matter that much, weirdly.
Buzzwole still can do Buzzwole things or annoy the opponents constantly. It's very annoying to go up against. It has the amount of CC. It's annoying. It's just a very annoying one. And even with like the Leech Life buff and everything, Leech Life is no longer that bad. It does okay damage. Annoying for one mon. You just grab them. They can't do much. Lunge is still a very good move. Even from before, it wasn't that bad compared to SmackDown. People just like SmackDown for its CC. But Lunge still holds up, especially when it can increase your base attack speed for more of your muscle gauge, slow the opponent, lower their attack, especially on someone like Buzzwole, who's not the tankiest, but a bit more tanking matters. And it gives you movement, pretty effective movement. It's not bad, it's pretty big. And Buzzwole still doesn't change too much because your entire kit revolves around beast boost. You get that kill, Buzzwole pops off. Buzzwole can do very well once it gets a kill.
Tyranitar would have had higher when it just got buffed, but they got nerfed, so back to F tier you go. Back to F tier you go. With T-Tar, Larvitar is actually decent, but Pupitar is so terrible. Pupitar is just so bad, it doesn't do anything.
Possibly the worst mon in the game.
Yeah, and once you get Tyranitar, you get your moves online, your passive's insane, and it is kind of strong, but you can still get beat out by range mons. You're tanky, but you're not so tanky unless you're actually ahead, and you're not going to be ahead because Pupitar sucks. And you're just going to exploit it in the early game. There are ways to build around it, so it's not the worst Pokemon in the entire game, but it is still F tier, right? Like, Slowbro has a good Unite move, Blastoise can sometimes counter stuff. That doesn't make them any good. So, yeah, T-Tar is terrible, unfortunately. I actually quite like this character, but it just doesn't work consistently. It does pop off. Like, when it's good, it's crazy. It's winning games, but the rate that happens at is very low. Mew, some people have very high. I disagree. We put in D tier again. Our D tier isn't actually all that bad, but it's nothing special after a very large number of nerfs over the years.
It still has its destruction. It has decent destruction. It's pretty decent in lane, and it does have its move variety. A lot of versatility with that. And then you have your Unite, which is not great because of how long it's cooldown, but it's not like completely useless. The problem with Mew is just after so many nerfs, the stats are really falling off. Your damage is just not that high. It's very sad for like a mage, where your damage is just not enough, and Mew has that issue. Your damage isn't very. You have decent destruction, but like Solar Beam's too weak. Electrical does decent damage for you to get close. Surf disrupts, but that's about all you're doing. Your support moves are okay, bit of movement and all, buffing, light screen disrupts, but you have the versatility, but just you don't have the stats anymore after so many.
Now, Scyther is going to be Scyther and Scizor. We're not ranking these separately because you choose in the game, which I think would be strange to rank them separately because you will choose depending on what you see you're up against. You will choose depending on the context. The items might be a bit different sometimes, but you're not necessarily locking in. So I would say that these are the same mon. So we're going to rank Scyther.
And this buffs Mon a lot when you have the option to choose which Mon you go for. Because both Mons are still completely different from their counterpart. But you get the option to choose. Your opponent doesn't know the option instantly. It's not bad.
Yeah, exactly. We count these as the same mon. And overall, we're going to put it in B tier. I'd like to put it higher, actually. I really like playing Scyther, especially. Scizor can be a good counter pick as well because of how much defense it can gain. But as for Scyther, I really like it. Go off, blow up, jungle, get insanely ahead, and start wiping entire teams. Your Unite move combo with Wing Beat is a very technical mon. You have to land everything perfectly because you are extremely frail, and your dashes are extremely long. If you pull all of it off, it is a lot of damage. It is a lot of damage. The problem is it's not the most well-positioned into this meta. There's a lot of chunky stuff that you can't quite one-shot, and because of that, they will land moves on you, and that is very scary as a Scyther. There's ways to get out, but you do get countered a little hard, so I wouldn't put it any higher. Stat-wise, Scyther's insane. It does a very, very high amount of very fast damage. And then if you start getting kills, it's even scarier, because then you start getting resets on your moves, and it really goes off. But with that being said, it's a risky mon to use. If you get a little behind, it's very hard to... Not because you can't get kills again when you're behind, you can, but it's because your late game is not the most incredible for a jungle, definitely not. And so if you fail to get your team ahead, that late game is going to be tough if the opponent has a better scaling jungle, which they often will. The same cannot be said for Overlord's favorite character, Dodrio. I don't know if it's actually his favorite, but he plays it a bit, and it's not very good right now.
Yeah, Dodrio, it does have its base movement speed is very fast. It doesn't have dash, like the versatility of dash, where like you can dodge and things like that. It's a fast mon. It can run around the opponent, get places, score, but then when you're in an actual fight, either or try attack or drill peck, your damage is so bad it can kind of be ignored. And if you do like hit them, drill peck shoves them a bit, you're now right in front of your opponent with some mons that you can't do much about. You get CC'd, you have no speed anymore, you're just dead. With like jump kick, you get a bit of movement, it can do some, but you're still a speedster. Your stats aren't there for your defensiveness. You can dodge a bit, but it's not a very good one. You need walls for a very tiny jump. It's just not that good. You're mostly relying on your base movement speed to just like not engage in an actual fight. But if you do get hit by like a stray CC, heavy slow move, you just start moving, and it's very bad. Your Unite move can help with it a bit, but you're not gonna always have it up. It's a very long charge Unite move, and then like you have to place it well for a move that like forces your movement. The opponent basically knows exactly where you're going. Isn't very good. So if you get predicted on Dodrio like at all, you stop playing the game. You're dead because you have bad tank stats and you have no way of getting past CC like that.
Yeah, one thing that's good about Dodrio is that if you can skill gap the opponent very hard, then you can actually dodge everything and just take over. But the format of this tier list is, again, equal skill, maximal skill, which means that we're assuming the opponent knows all the counterplay, which makes it much worse than maybe it would be in an actual randoms game. Next, Sableye. We're actually going to be quite generous to Sableye and give it a C tier, even though it's something of a troll pick.
Like, Sableye has its things, it's disruptive, it has its mark, the opponent knows it's there but can't see it, it can be annoying, and then it's very disruptive. It's just always there, always lingering, it can always do something, I guess. If you CC like someone that's about to fight your teammates or like the hyper carry, they can be out of commission, your team can win the fight like that, because the Sableye can just run past the opponent's team. The Unite move, it has its uses, especially in a 5-star. We can actively communicate that you Unite decent in a 5-star with its use on its Unite move. It is a very long stun, while also the backs the opponent. It's not bad. It has its thing. It can disrupt the opponent. It does what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, its ability to really be this ISO carry kind of character should not be underestimated. At the same time, it is a very pure disruption mage, and it is not going to be the most powerful thing that you see. And so for that reason, it's not going to get an extremely high placement, but we're being generous and giving it a C tier placement.
It also it gives the opponent an icon that knows it's there. That's kind of an issue. It becomes a bit predictable.
Now we have the high skill but shell of its former self, Zoroark. Not what it used to be. Definitely not what it used to be.
Yeah, after a billion nerfs, its stats aren't there. It still has its movement. It can dodge, but your damage is just no longer there for that to be that effective. It's a lot harder to get your like with feint attack combo. Like Pointless, like you did so much damage, so you could like kind of just like get past the CC, scare them off, or also just like kill them while you set off for your strong hit, so to kill the rest of the team. But now it's like you don't do enough damage for that to just like kill them. So now feint attack's more of a movement tech to just like dodge around, hope you get the final hit, and that final hit can do decent damage, but if your opponent spreads out a bit, you hit only one, and if you hit the tank, still probably won't kill. That's a bit of an issue. Night Slash is not even close to what it was before. It still has its damage. Like, it was damage combo potential, but now it just doesn't do enough damage. You can get the combo off, but the combo's not even that good anymore. It doesn't have the stats anymore for a speedster. You're still frail because you're a speedster, and your damage is no longer as high as what it was before. So you really just can't run through an opposing team and survive.
If the opponent tries to use moves on you, you have a lot of ways to dodge them, but the opponent just autos you in between your dashes. You just take a lot of damage, and then because your HP, defense in general, right, your defensive stats are bad, even though you're doing more damage than your opponent's probably doing, you're still dying to just chip from autos as you combo. And because your combo is no longer just one cycling, that damage adds up and you just end up dying earlier than you really want to. If you're not ahead, it's not that effective. And if you are ahead, there is sufficient counterplay still, but you're not immediately winning.
It's predictable where the Zoroark is. If you have more than one person fighting, it's very difficult for the Zoroark.
Yeah. We're being quite harsh with our Shifu, and we're going to give it a C tier. Again, this is both forms. It's not the craziest thing. Yeah, you can basically do infinite surging strikes again with blue buff from jungle, but how the damage is now, it's better than before the nerf, but it's not as, or better than before the buff, but not as good as before the nerf. It's not quite enough.
A Shifu did get nerfed again, such as Swiss Arena, where no longer works on the unstoppable targets. That matters a lot. Especially if they just go unstoppable during rapid strikes combos, you lose out on a lot from that.
Yeah, and Kubfu is not a fast jungler. It is just not quite there. Next, on a very high note, we have one of the best characters in this game. Another S tier, Dragapult.
Dragapult, yes, okay, it does have its weakness of being frail, but Dragapult is a very strong damage dealer. Now, most will think Phantom Force for increased survivability. Phantom Force is not very good. You need a lot of style, you need kills to truly start going. Well, compared to Dragon Dance, you need a single kill. That single kill will carry Dragonite through. Difference between Phantom Force of 85% attack speed compared to Dragon Dance 200%. That's more than doubled. You do have a predictable pattern, so you don't always get the full effect of Dragon Dance, but you're so fast, you can cover an insane amount of range with how big your autos during Dragon Dance is. You have a circle. You're immune to the stage. You can go out of the stage. That's very effective. going through walls, very strong. And once you get that kill, once you get a single kill on Dragon Dance, you can kind of just run through the team. That one kill just gets you a reset, and you just spam Dragon Dance at that point. They can't do anything because you canceled it before to build damage, but now you can get full Dragon Dances up because you get so many. You get so many, your move is no longer predictable because of how many Dragon Dances you can get. I would say Dragon Breath is better than Shadow Ball, as Dragon Breath flows, you can use it during Dragon Dance. Place down a hazard for the opponent where they don't want to step in to give you your stacks. Build stacks pretty quickly. And once you get your stacks, you have an AoE on your massive autos. It's so strong. You can do so much damage with it. It's like Buzzword to extreme. And that's not even talking about Dragon Balls insanely strong Unite move. Absurdly strong. It has two targets, a bit of AoE that does execute damage. It's absurdly strong, especially if you can get two to target a single opponent. And we're not even talking about how it has a 10-second charge. It charges Unite move so quickly and so strong. Even without you Dragon Dancing, just use your Unite move a few times. It does so much damage, while also having an insane amount of range, and you just build up damage. Once you get enough damage, if the fight lasts long enough, Dragon Ball just wins. One kill, one assist is all it needs. It gets that, it runs through a team.
And you proc energy amp too, so it makes that first
kill
easier.
Yeah,
makes
you
the
get your
second
energy
kill
amp
easier, makes the third kill easier. It keeps going until all of them are dead forever.
And your movement isn't predictable. You just leave the Dragon Dance. Of course it's predictable. That's why you cancel the move. Canceling moves is insanely strong in this game because they don't know where you're canceling on Dragon Dance. You do a jump back, you have a massive circle. You can jump anywhere from that circle. Just you can get it can be just a straight dash, just a dashboard. Insanely strong when you can cancel Dragon Dance properly.
Next we have Comfey, which we're actually going to put in A+ tier, which might seem a little strange, but Comfey is like the best way to support a speedster because it attaches to it. And it also has some really interesting tech because it can really trick the opponent. The reason is simple. It's because typically when a Comfey is up, right, and you can hit it and it can't attach to anyone, the play is to try to kill the Comfey, of course, because the Comfey is very vulnerable. And so as the Comfey player, you can take advantage of that instinct in order to trick the opponent into trying to kill you when it's not the right play for them because of the information diff that you have with your opponent.
Yeah, Comfey is still a second mon. Most people wouldn't think of it as, but it's a second mon. You can use your moves while you're not attached. Now, obviously, there's benefit to the longer you stay attached, but you have your own health bar. If you use it, you can take a bit of shit. You can force range monsters to force attacking you. You can just tank a bit for your team, but then also you have the safety of once you get on someone, you can just stay on them. Once your carry dies anyways, you're dead anyway. It's like in most situations, sometimes you can escape. But like at that point, you're just not getting hit anyways, because you get hit once, you get CC, you're dead. On Comfey, you can sacrifice that bit of HP to do something, and then get on your team, and you still sit on them. You can boost them up by sitting on them, and yeah, you just have your support, your healing, Sweet Kiss Disruption. You have your CC off Magical Leaf or Grass Knot. It just does a bit. It does a bit to help your carry, and that matters.
Oh, it gets the job done. Goodra is going in F tier. Goodra is one of those pup stomp characters where if the opponent's terrible, Goodra's insane. You just keep hitting pulse and you never die and you beat them up. But if the opponent's good, then they're going to dodge your attacks, and then all of a sudden, you kind of don't do very much.
Gloomy early game, but still not very strong.
Goodra's not all the way down here is because your passive is actually really annoying. It's a lot of slow, and for that reason alone, it gets to be at the top of F tier. Lapras is it's pretty nerfed. Used to be very high up, right? Very solid tank. It still is quite defensively powerful, but it's gotten a lot weaker offensively. Your damage is no longer there.
You're no longer any threat. You still have your bit of CC, but your CC is avoidable. And Yeah, you're there, but you don't do that much. You kind of just can get ignored, and then you have your game-changing Unite move.
The Unite move's still decent, but it's not enough to
Yeah.
justify bringing it any higher. So next we have one of our only sort of uncertain placements on the list, and that's Zacian. We just haven't played very much. Zacian played pretty much every character a significant amount, but Zacian's one of the very few exceptions, and there's maybe one or two more of these. Zacian is just weird. And we know it enough, kind of, where pretty sure Sacred Sword is still the right moveset. It is still really strong if you land all of it, but the challenge is to land all of it, right? The opponent can easily play around it. You have some movement and agility. Your autos can be relatively powerful, but altogether, it's an awkward thing to work. It has a strange kit. It does have still pretty high base stats, but it has gotten nerfed a lot, so the base stats are no longer oppressive like they were on release. You are also down an item, which is significant. Your Unite move charges for quite a while and uses energy, which makes it a little inconsistent. I've seen the numbers on the damage, but I haven't felt them in game. I don't know why. Maybe people are just bad at using it. I do need to try Zacian a bit more to give it a better placement. This is one of the only mods I really never play. Though
It's very awkward where it has movement moves, but then its offensive move is completely stationary. But then your stationary move is the one with CC and like, damage. Energy restriction is always annoying. A lot of issues that like conflict with itself in terms of Zacian's kit, and that's why even though we don't completely know, it doesn't make sense for it, and it doesn't feel that good.
Alright, next we have Chandelure, which is another S tier, another S tier.
The worst part of its kit is I would say it's early game. It's not terrible. You have Burn. Ember being two moves at once, it's not bad. It gives solid damage. So it's not a terrible because of Burn. You can do a decent amount. You can stun as well. It's not terrible. It isn't, I wouldn't say, near some of the other S tiers in terms of early game. But it's still a solid early game. It's solid. The rest of its kit is absurdly strong. Its ability to ignore defenses, just completely ignore their special defense. Flamethrower overheat. Flamethrower's, I would say, a substantially better move. Overheat, it's not very good. It's too slow. You have to hit multiple to get a combo off. It's just so bad. And then Chimera Flamethrower, it's fast, big AoE. It's not even that bad if you use it close, but if you use it from the explosion, it's obviously stronger. And it literally has zero cooldown. So why would you not spam this? You just hit an opponent, your move is back up, you just start spamming this thing. You're already ignoring defenses, you're doing so much damage. And then, like, Flamethrower Plus, you do even more damage. You just have a crazy strong move, does so much damage in a single hit. That has no cooldown. It effectively is zero. As long as you can land Flamethrower, especially with how big it is, the opponent's dying. They can't survive like 2-3 flamethrowers. It kills demon tanks. Poltergeist in prison. In prison is vastly better. It's very good move. It lasts for 4 seconds on the ground. Doesn't even have that long of a cooldown because of that. And then you hit someone, it CCs, and if they're entering the prison, they literally can't use their moves. What are you going to do when you can't dodge flamethrower anymore? Or even use a chasing to get even closer to Shan? You die. Gets rid of an entire function of the game of using your moves. Every mod has moves it needs to use. If you're in prison, you cannot. And it's still a CC move. That's absurdly strong, especially against a mod like Shen where you do crazy damage. Mods that try to chase you down, like mimic you, beatsters, they can't touch you because of imprison. A good Shen that can predict the opponent's movement at all to place down in prisons, most beatsters can't even chase you. And if they do, you have the strongest attack in the game, the Unite. Shan's Unite move is easily the strongest thing in the game. Now, most people wouldn't know this. You know why? They don't know how to fucking land the move. Now, once you can get CC'd out of the moon, just don't get CC'd. It's not very hard. You can play full heal. Someone else can stop it. Or you can just be protected because it's so large. And the opponent has to get through playing blind. Now, people don't realize this. But blind is like you're literally blind. You cannot see anything around you. If you blind the opponents, they have to guess where you are, and you don't need to use the move instantly. You could save it. You blind them and just use flamethrowers or imprison, and they're still cooked. Because it's also really big. If you hit the entire opposing team blind, what are they gonna do? They can't target with their Unite moves. They can't target. They can't see you, and then your entire team can just blow them up. And that's not without saying that Shan can't solo blow up. Your move does an absurd amount of damage. If you hit 5 of them, they're just dead. No one's surviving the drill. The beam is so strong. It does absurd amount of damage. And it's also still the best move for Ray. You have the best move in a team fight that completely blinds the opponent. And you have the best move for Ray. With amp and special attack items, you're doing basically half of Ray's health in a single move. Most people don't know this. They think, oh, Shan doesn't do enough. Shan can just solo Ray. Your Unite move is easily the strongest in the game while still having a busted kit. Shan is so strong as a mage.
Umbreon is up here too. A+ tier. You can see the support quad. Basically, each support here corresponds to another type. So Fable is for defenders, Umbreon is for attackers, Hoopa is for all-rounders, and Comb-Face for speedsters. Umbreon has a really funny trick where the Unite move can rip off every shield and then give all the shields to Umbreon. And so the way this ends up working is if you play it right, you can do a ton of effective damage by ripping off their really important shields and start killing them with the rest of your team, and also become unkillable at the same time by not only getting rid of their shields, breaking them, but also taking them. It's very powerful. And the rest of your kit's also pretty good. I don't like Mean Look too much anymore, but in some matchups it is still oppressive. I like Foul Play these days just because Mean Look has a lot of nerfs. The range is pretty bad now. Foul Play is still pretty good because it can do a little bit of damage and has some okay displacement, okay movement, which can help. I really like Wish still. I've never liked Snarl. There are foreseeably some matchups where Snarl is correct, but Wish is really good. You can use it on yourself, but more importantly, you can give it to a teammate, give them damage reduction and healing, which is really strong. Can prevent them from getting one shot and then recover so they can do the thing again, pretty much. But the big thing with Umbreon is going to be your Unite move. Just the passive, bonus effect. Not the damage, not the jump, but the ability to rip off and steal shields is so powerful that it really brings it up all the way here. Next up we have Leafeon. So Leafeon's gotten a lot of nerfs. It is not the craziest thing. It still has a decent early game. It still has one of the better level 4s in this game. It's not that hard to play around. If the opponent has maximal skill, which not everyone has of course, they can play around it. There's ways to do the math with the chlorophyll if they're on Solar Blade, and as for Razor Leaf, there's ways to brawl through it, predict its dashes with Aerial Ace. Some ways to get around it. But the main problem with Leafeon is that although your early game is there, your late game is simply not there. Your late game is not sufficient in order to justify putting a bunch of resources into the Leafeon. And Leafeon is very good at getting kills rather than setting up kills, which means that oftentimes the XP is going to funnel into Leafeon quite a bit rather than the rest of the team. And so come late game, you end up with an ahead Leafeon perhaps, but often doesn't convert because it is just not the best late game character. Your Unite move is decent enough, but it's not sufficient if you're dealing with a better scaling jungle on the opponent's side, unfortunately. So there are a number of weaknesses to playing Leafeon. It's not the worst thing ever, but I do think something like Zoroark is a little bit better. Next we have Inteleon, which is actually one of the best ADCs in the game, and we'll explain what we mean by that.
Now, Inteleon has its basic strong parts. It does have the best secure arguably in the game. Water gun crits, just so strong. Your first move is just built up your crit counters and a bit of movement. Both moves are fine. Snipeshot Liquidation. Recent buffs a lot of usage at the start. Now it's died down a bit. Liquidation, okay. It's kind of the same issue with Glaceon. Just takes a while, but it does more damage. It does do a bit more damage, and like you can use moves during it. Snipe shot, people really love snipe shot. It's just you aim it and you hit your opponent with a strong move that once you charge it up long enough. Now, a concerning issue with snipe shot is that it literally reveals your position. On a mon that goes invisible, needs to hide long range, and will get one shot, that's pretty big. Now, there's obviously get arounds, and like you have the tech where people just swing the move while charging it to like scare the opponent. There's the real tech, though. The real tech of either just being close enough and just spam the move. Now it does less damage, but it's still not that bad of a move. Or you do a back flick. You flick the move while on the opposite side. Now you don't know where the opponent is, like don't completely know where the opponent is. Sometimes you can't see them when you turn around. But if you're good enough at Inteleon, you will just hit these shots and they'll still do decent damage. Now, I'm saying decent damage, not absurd damage, because we're getting to the real Inteleon part, the Unite move. Now, I know I just went on a tangent on Fans Unite, but now we have Inteleon's Unite. Inteleon Unite lasts so long. It's a like 10-second Unite, and a very important part, it reveals everyone in stealth or in grass. It's very important as it can do so for your team as well, which allows sure hit moves to target. Very important. Grass is the dumbest mechanic in the game, where it just can sometimes just make an opponent like invincible because grass is what's very important. It's also like a real Glaceon Unite. It gives you your stats. The real build on Inteleon is amped with auto attack items. Now, people may think this is crazy because you only get 3 auto attacks for most of the game. But most of the game, you don't need to do that much. You just like set up. Most of the game is important. You have your good early game. That's important. That's the second most important of the game. Your mid game, you just sit around, be scary with a sniping move. You just run around. That's fine. Take camps. Make sure you're not behind. And late game was obviously the most important part. You have the Unite move with auto attacks, energy amp. You can just murder an entire team with your auto attacks. Your autos do so much damage with an increased crit, so you're doing 250% autos. They can't hide and bush away from your autos. You have crazy range on your autos, and you just melt the opponent. They'll just die in 2 auto attacks while you're getting like 20 during your 10-second United. You just can murder an entire team by just spamming autos. Your auto attacks just do so much damage. Rapid fire, energy amp. And it's still just burst rate with it. If you either the opponent's already dead or you killed them too quickly, you can just start bursting rate. You can like basically solo Ray with the Unite move. It does that much damage.
Yeah. The ADC Inteleon, they're not gonna see it coming.
Yeah.
Next we have our Mewtwo's, and we're actually gonna put them together, which might be a bit weird because they aren't quite different, but they have very similar weaknesses and similar strength. Your weaknesses are that your cooldowns are really long because they got nerfed a million times, and your strengths are once you do Mega, you're still pretty freaking busted. Now, the Unite move has a really long cooldown too now. Frankly, it is basically what Unite moves used to be when the game came out, but you know, the meta has changed a lot. There's been a lot of power creep with Unite move cooldown, so now it's quite atrocious to have that long of a Unite cooldown. And it's also not as powerful as it used to be. Everything about Mewtwo is basically shell of their former selves. They are still decent enough. So X is kind of a Garchomp clone, Y is kind of an ADC. But they also have another key weakness that they share, which is that they're really bad at taking camps, which is a strange weakness, I guess. But for a carry, you really want to be the one that's taking camps on your team. Because you need someone to take camps, and the more damage you have, the better. Mewtwo's don't do that at all. They are terrible at taking camps. That's why a lot of Mewtwo's have taken on a more supportive role, because they just cannot scoop up all the camps. It's very frustrating to be like that when you also want to scale. The Megas are both good, also. They're both able to take over fights. And they're both relatively the same difficulty to set up. Y is arguably a bit easier to Mega, but it doesn't make enough of a difference, I think. I do think X is a little bit better than Y, Mostly because I think it is a little bit better at taking camps. I think it is a little bit better in fights as well. But overall, they are quite similar. The Unite move is still pretty good just because of the amount of range it has. But again, the damage is no longer what it used to be, and the cooldown is very long. For those reasons, we're going to put them relatively low. Next, we have Blaziken. We're actually going to put Blaziken at the top of C tier. This might be a bit too low, but I do think the nerfs were quite significant. Now, earlier would have been a much higher tier. But for now, we'll put it at the top of C tier. There might be some counter evidence that one can raise that maybe Blaziken is still a little bit better. That remains to be seen for me at least. So it is possible I'll move it higher in the future. It is still quite good. Your weakness is that your early game is very awkward. There are combos you can do with your, is it called Pack or is it Aerial Ace? I can't remember what the name is, but your
Aerial Ace.
Is it Aerial Ace? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have Ember as well, right? That's the other move. But once you do get your Blaze Kick, it is pretty good displacement. Overheat is awkward to use, but it gets the job done at times. And then your other set, which is, what is it, like Fire Punch, Focus Blast, those moves are very powerful, actually. And of course, your Unite move is insane. You just keep spamming it, you get healing, and it's all pretty good once you get set up on Blaziken. Mimikyu might be surprising. We're not going to give it an extremely high tier either. This might be a little bit of downplay for Mimikyu, but we're going to put it in B tier. The reason is because, although it's frustrating to play against, Play Rough especially is more frustrating, though I do think Shadow Claw is a slightly better move. It is not that powerful, and the reason for this is because if you do actually get into a brawl with Mimikyu, so you let him Shadow Sneak you, you let him jump on you, and you let him do whatever, if you're in the actual fight with Mimikyu, it is not that hard to beat in a brawl. Mimikyu has some ability to brawl, it does have some okay damage, but there are a lot of characters that can simply tank the first part, go down to like half, maybe even lower, and simply win that fight anyways, and push through that fight. So for that reason, there are very bad situations that Mimikyu can find itself in, where it burned its move, it went in hard, it's going for the win, and it just ends up losing the fight itself, because its ability to brawl is still relatively limited, which is this balancing mechanism. There is another moveset you can run on Mimikyu, which is Trick Room. I actually very much like Trick Room. I think it is really good. Probably not better than Shadow Sneak, but it is able to have very high skill expression because you can get so many dashes, and if you do every single one perfectly with prediction of the future, it is quite strong in a brawl in that sense. The problem, however, is though you're now better in the brawl, right? You're much better in the brawl. You're able to abuse the mechanics of Trick Room perfectly, get them out, take much less damage. You are, because of Trick Room, actually going to be much worse at getting on their Frailmon and one-shotting them, which is what you're doing with Shadow Sneak. So, though you're gaining on one front, you're losing on another front. So, I don't think enough to just say, oh, Trick Room's oppressive, it's going to win every fight, because that's simply not going to be the case, especially if the opponent's also maximal skill, they're going to be able to walk into Trick Room and get in your way. So, Mimikyu has some key weaknesses, though it is still pretty powerful. You jungle it, you get ahead, and there are many situations where you just eat their whole team up. Next, though, we have Meowscarada, which we're going to put at the number 1 spot on this tier list, because it is another Garchomp clone, actually. It is the Speedster Garchomp.
Meow, well, first of all, it is the Speedster, yes. But its auto attacks are just so strong under Night Slash and Trailblaze. Now, Trailblaze doubles your attack speed for a solid 4 seconds, and then Night Slash just gives you increased crit. As we stated earlier, crits are insanely strong. So if you have a Mon with crazy strong autos, high damage, high stats for attack, and then double your attack speed, the enemy team will just melt. They cannot survive Night Slash Trailblaze. It does absurd amount of damage. It can hit multiple people, win the 1v1s easily because they die so quickly from your amount of damage. You just do so much, and Trailblaze is a crazy big dash, especially from the bush. From the bush, you just ambush someone insanely far away. You nerf their attack speed so they can't beat you, and their movement speed so they can't run away. And even if they try, they dash away, your boosted are a dash anyways. You have more movement from your boosted, crazy high movement from Trailblaze. They lose stats, and then you just crit them. You just crit them down, and you still get life steal from it. So you think, oh, healing wouldn't matter too much on speed still. But the amount of invincibility Meow can have is absurd. Your passive literally gives you invisibility and invincibility. You can just leave the fight. It's absurdly strong, while also not counting the amount of invincibility frames from Trailblaze. During your dash, they can't hit you, and it's so big. You just use it, you can dodge moves, you still have your dash and your boosted, you have so much movement, you still get shields from Trailblaze, so you're not that frail at all. No, you're not the tankiest, but you're not frail enough to get one shot. Especially if they can't hit their moves, you can run through an entire team and still just kill them all, because they have like a second before they're dead from how strong your auto attacks are. And then your early game, it's not the worst. You don't have the greatest jungle as your power spike is level 6. But you do have good secure on leafage. It's not that bad. Good damage. And you still have home claws, which is a pretty good move. Increase your attack speed 80%. And increases the damage of your autos. Not bad. Home claws is pretty good. And then you have the Unite move. Unite move is just an extra dash if they had all the counterplay or like too many people. And it's really long. You could say it has the weakness of where you can't control it once you start activating it, but it's so strong. It's another dash. It gives you more invincibility frames during the dash. Now, you're not invincibility during the move itself, but they're dead. The move is absurdly strong. It does insanely high damage. And it gives Meow the extra chase potential. Sometimes it's just an extra dash to land your Night Assassin Trailblaze because you do so much damage already. With Ant, your move can just kill an entire team by itself. Especially when it can hit the entire team because it's so big. It's so big. Now, it does do a lot of hits, but you don't need all the hits. You do so much damage. Now, the nerf did kind of matter. It did nerf the charge on your Night move. You don't get it as often, so you don't get your overly strong Unite move very often compared to before, but you still get it enough during the fight for it to matter. You just need it for late game. Late game's all that matters. Just does so much. And then it has resets. It can just run through a team by itself so easily. It's just so strong.
I would say next we have Metagross, which is good but not exceptional. It has a lot of defensive abilities with the shielding and such. And the Unite move is quite good if you land it fully. But there's a decent amount of counterplay to just playing range bonds against Metagross. And it doesn't have the highest damage ever. It has a lot of area, but that's not quite enough.
Yeah, it can tank a bit. It has a bit of tanking, especially against like 5 people. It can actually hit them. Range bonds do beat you out. The Unite move's not bad. It can see through people, and if you hit 3 enough, you get the wall, which can matter. But it's just like, you don't do enough. You do okay amount. You have okay tanking. It's like pretty good for an all-rounder. And you have okay damage, but it's just not absurdly high. And you want to fight multiple people, which then makes your tanking better, but you're still not absurdly strong. And your damage doesn't really change too much.
Yeah, next we have Gyarados. Gyarados is another Garchomp clone among many. And it has a very distinct playstyle. Of course, you have Magikarp, which has a very bad early game, and then you have the big evolution of Gyarados, which gives you a really good sort of second half of laning phase when you get there, and then it peters off into having a decent mid-game, decent late game. Overall, just relatively balanced in that respect. Has some very good moves, though. Dragon Breath is a really strong move. It combines a buff move with a ranged attack, and the buff is crazy, but the range attack is not to be underestimated. There's a lot of times where you can get Securas, get kills, get a lot of damage from range using the tip of your Dragon Breath. It actually goes for quite a long distance. And bounce is also really strong. So something very important about bounce is that when you're charging bounce, you're unstoppable. And you can also cancel the bounce charge. And if you do that, you only have about 2 seconds before it comes back to you. So you're able to make these plays where you go micro tap bounce, fade CC, cancel, breath, fight, and then bounce again. You're able to get CC and knock up if you do actually land the bounce. And so there's a lot of really technical play you can do where you use bounce to fade attacks, essentially. Now, you do have to be careful because you still take the damage from the attacks. You're only fading the CC. You're not actually invincible. You're not even reducing damage very much. So, you are still getting hit, right? You're still taking damage. But oftentimes, it is correct to do so to fade their CC with your Gyarados. You can even like walk in front of your team to actually just block CC moves. It's a risky play. You're not the tankiest thing ever, but it does get the job done. Your Night move is also very good. There are some downsides where you have to charge it for a little bit, and then that gives the opponent the opportunity to flash away. But even with all of that being said, it is a very powerful Unite move. There's a lot of situations where you're able to Unite move in, get the big triple stage, hit onto them, get a breath down, and just auto through them, and then set up a bounce, fade the CC coming over your way, and then bounce into another location, get another kill, and win an entire fight that way. So for these reasons, Gyarados is very good. And then perhaps the strongest part of the Gyarados kit is, like Garchomp, is your auto attack. Unlike Garchomp, which has a really wide auto attack, Gyarados has a really long auto attack. You can auto attack someone from exceptionally far away. For a melee auto, I think it is one of the longest, if not the longest, true melee auto in the entire game. If you pay attention to it, you can land Gyarados autos from extremely far away without moving either. It's pretty much this really small ranged attack almost, as opposed to just an auto attack. It bites really far for what would be a melee auto attack. You can not only get past a wall, a really small wall like Garchomp can, but you can actually be sort of a step behind the wall and still hit someone through the wall, which is extremely powerful because you're able to create distance while fighting. And if you're against a fellow melee mon and you move perfectly, you can almost make that situation where you can auto them when they can't auto you, which is a game-winning play. Next up, we have Miraidon and also Phalanx. These are another two mons in that small short list that we're not the most familiar with. We're going to put Miraidon, low D tier, a little unfortunate. I really like this character. Charge Beam is okay-ish, but I think the other sniping options are better. Mew, Venusaur, Inteleon, Decidueye. And I do like Drift more than Charge Beam, but I have a major problem with Drift, which is that there is a huge startup lag on the powered-up Drift. The base Electro Drift, where you just sort of step on the gas and do a quick dash and do a bunch of damage, put a lightning bolt on them, that one is really good. And you use that a couple times, it does a ton of damage. But then the big one, right? The powered up one, the one you want to build up, supposedly, the big attack that goes super far, that one's very hard to use. The reason is because it has a million years of startup lag. You activate it and you kind of just die before it even goes off. So what you have to do is you have to like go away and then use the full range of it. It does have a really big range in order to land it without fear of the startup lag. But then you're just losing out on so much tempo when you make that play. You're moving away and then using it. It's just a frustrating move. And for that reason, we're going to give Miraidon a relatively low rating. Then Phalanx, we're also going to give a pretty low rating. This might be a bit better, but the key weakness of Phalanx is, of course, it has really bad interactions with a lot of things. Extreme Speed can just keep resetting off of it. Giga Drain just heals to like full HP if you ever land it. More than that, honestly, you get like 200% healing if you hit a Phalanx with a Giga Drain. It's really terrible. Brave Bird can get, I think, just multiple Aerial Ace resets. And there's some other examples too where there's a lot of bad mashups as a Phalanx player. So if you're in draft, especially if you're early in a draft, the opponent will just guaranteed pick a counter if they know what they're doing. And if you're in randoms, you kind of just have to hope the opponent doesn't have a counter, which is not very reliable. So there's a lot of weakness. Before, Phalanx would have been highly rated, even with this weakness. The reason being that it was just oppressive with no retreat. But now that no retreat is nerfed, it's no longer so powerful that you're actually getting a ridiculous win rate when you're not getting countered, and your whole team is getting cooked if you are getting countered, so that it brings the overall effectiveness of Phalanx quite low, unfortunately. So we're going to put it here for now, though it does take a bit more testing. I haven't really played it too much after the nerf, so this, the Zacian, kind of the Mewtwo's, and the Miraidon, these are the least secure ratings on this list. So next we have Cerulege. Cerulege is really fun, actually. It is one of my favorite mons to play, but that does not give it a super high rating. The nerf did happen recently. I don't think the nerf made the biggest difference, though it does change your interactions a little bit. I still think Bitterblade Phantom Force is the correct moveset. Bitterblade because it gives you healing. Even if it is really slow, there's ways to set it up properly so it doesn't harm you that much. And then Phantom Force is a bit to ignore shields, to give you invincibility, and to give you the ability to ignore defense as well. Even though the damage number on it is not the best, I think it is good enough. It does have a lot of things going for it. Mostly, though, is that invincibility and the amount of movement you're able to get by chaining the dash together with the pop out, right? If you do it very quickly, it gives you a lot of chasing ability, and then your auto also chases because you get the boosted. A lot of things going for it in that respect. Your Unite move is also still extremely powerful. If you hit the ball with it on multiple people, all the wounds sort of stack up, and then boom, 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 the marks come down, they just blow up. It's really strong. Soroja is another one of those mons where if you skill diff the opponent a lot, if you're much more skilled than the opponent, then you're really able to dodge everything they do and land everything and kill them. But in this format, for our tier list purposes, we're going to assume the opponent really is trying to play around it perfectly, and then it becomes a little bit of a 50-50, becomes less good that way. Then we have
I would say Cerulege, in even scale, Cerulege is quite predictable, especially in our list where it's all equal skill, maximum skill. Cerulege, at maximum skill, doesn't change too much. Like, you get a bit better at dodging and using your Ignite move, but also, it's still so predictable because you have animation on both of the moves. Especially, your Ignite move can just get phased, and Phantom Force shows the opponent where you are. It's just a bit predictable, especially with also how long Bitterblade takes.
Yeah.
In equal scale, Cerulege has very challenging matchups when your opponent plays around.
Yeah. Hello here. We're actually going to give it a rather generous B tier. I know a lot of people are going to put it in like S tier because it gets banned all the time in draft and whatnot, and it has a very high play rate. But I just don't think Ho is that good. I do think that, what are the moves called? Is it like, Fire Spin is the big explosion one. The other one, is it Sky Attack?
Yeah.
Yeah, Sky Attack Fire Spin I think is the correct way to play Ho-Oh. The reason is because it gives you this movement, and then it lets you blow up the opponent, and that actually does a fair amount of damage. The fire on the ground also does a fair amount, and it's the best way to tank. And I think one of Ho-Oh's big strengths is that it's actually very, very tanky, even for a defender. It gets a lot of shield, it's really able to soak up a lot of damage. And if you're able to take advantage of that, it is very powerful. Some weaknesses, your boosted auto is very frustratingly slow. It's just annoyingly slow how long that giant arc of fire takes. And while it's not the worst effect ever, it's just not worth the duration it takes. Your Unite move is very interesting, right? But it has a lot of weaknesses. The main one is that if you're really in a fight, and you're losing that fight because your teammates are dying, you go for that Unite move. The opponent can see where the feather is, and then if the opponent has maximal skill, like we're anticipating, they will perfectly time their cooldown on the feather and kill your teammate before they can do anything. So that's the situation we're working under. There are some times where that won't happen, which is if you're ahead on the fight, but you're down a player, and that player is sort of needed to, let's say, pressure Rayquaza and just take it, or to just completely take over the fight. They had to sack themselves for whatever reason, but you're actually ahead, you can defend that feather. Then your Ignite move is very good, but it is still really situational, so you're not able to use it like some other defenders to just proactively take over a fight immediately. You have to really use it circumstantially, and sometimes the circumstance never comes up, and then you just don't have a Unite move, and it's a little frustrating. You still use it normally for the buff, but of course that's not the best thing ever.
Your Ignite move also has the issue where you can't exactly control it too well on who you want to revive.
Yeah.
As you not always want to revive solo teammates, especially when you can't communicate with them. So that makes it a lot worse in solos.
Yeah, there is a thing where this is like that caveat we mentioned at the very start of the video with like not really assuming our teammates are all maximal skill, because there's a lot of circumstances where you're not paying attention to the game when you have a Ho on your team, especially because there's no big indicator when you're the one getting revived, and so you get revived and you don't do anything, right? You're reacting to it. Wait a second, what's happening? You just die in that moment when you could have done something if you knew about the revival beforehand. And a lot of times you're just not paying attention while you're dead, right? You're looking at someone else on the map. It's a natural habit for random players to have. And so if they're not fully aware that, oh, I'm playing with Ho, there's a good chance that your revive ends up not working and actually just feeding the opponent. But Sky Attack is an incredible move. And then next, finally, we have Armor Rouge. This is going to be a bit of a controversial rating as well. We're going to put Armor Rouge in D tier. I don't think this mon is very good at all. I think the correct way to play this is to play the defensive move set, where you play the dash move. I think it's a Flame Charge, and then you play... I have no idea what the giant fire ring around it is. Is it also Fire Spin?
Yeah, it's also
called Fire Spin, right? It looks kind of similar. That moveset's going to have some really good matchups, for especially if you're against a melee special mon, which is basically exactly Gengar. But if you're against Gengar, there's some others as well. You're able to really bully them. And even a lot of like physical melee mons, even like Garchomp struggles to fight that Armor Rouge because it's just able to sort of stack up with Fire Spin and brawl it out. And it is a strong moveset defensively, but it's not as good as a true tank in a lot of cases, and so it's not the most effective thing. It has some movement, but it's really hard to actually pressure someone and kill them. So the proactive play there is kind of weak. And then the other moves, Armor Cannon and Size Shock, I just do not think are very good. Size Shock has this problem where it hits all at once, and it has this big area of effect, but... the really effective part of that is much smaller than the full set, and the chance you hit everything there is pretty much non-existent. And then Armor Cannon has a problem where you can't even cancel it or use it prematurely really well at all. It's not like Power Up Punch where you can sort of insta-tap it if you have to. No, you kind of are forced to use the full charge on Armor Cannon, and while it has a lot of damage when that does happen, it makes it very slow and predictable, and, well, that's just not really what you want out of Mage, because you have really strong mages in this game, like Cramorant, that can insta-cast their moves, essentially, especially something like Hurricane, and that will just do as much as an Armor Cannon does, except, well, it doesn't have the weaknesses of Armor Cannon. And Armor Cannon even lowers your defense, albeit not by the largest amount. It's not a good thing. You don't want to be frailer, especially because you don't have the other moves that are boosting your defense in that moveset.
The move is just worse if the move has a true weakness, while there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, especially because there's just other mage options in this game that are much more reliable. Armor is tankier than those mage options, but honestly, if you're playing the range moveset, that's not coming up that much. And then if you're playing the defensive moveset, well, you're just worse than an actual tank. So it's in an awkward spot. It's not the worst thing ever because it does have some decent damage still, but... And like that brawling ability on a range mon, it could matter sometimes. It's just not quite worth it compared to some of the other mages we have in this game.
And you do have your Unite move.
Unite move's pretty good. Yeah, Unite move's pretty good.
It's a 2-second stun, I think.
Yeah, we were talking about how crazy Mamo is 1.5 seconds. This is a bigger 2-second stun. Even if it's on a Unite move, it doesn't matter what's on if it's just going to team wipe them, right?
Yeah.
So there is our tier list. Kind of strange looking, but we believe this to be the most accurate way to represent the power levels in this game. Again, given the context that we've prescribed, which if you're skipping to the end, go back to the beginning and you can see that context.
Yeah.
There are some like traits here, like we discussed the A+s. Our S tiers have the trait where if you play 2 S tiers in a duo queue in a randoms game perfectly, you will have a win rate with them north of 99%, provided that the internet's working, so you're not lagging out of the game on red ping, and your team has fewer than 2 AFKs. If you have 1 AFK, you should still be able to win. But yeah, if you have 2 AFKs, then that's a bit too much of a downside. So that's like a trait that's according to the tier list, and that's why Aegislash is not S tier. Because like the power level is there, but it doesn't have that trait. The rest of the tier list doesn't really have traits, but those top 3 tiers kind of do. So yeah, tell us what you think in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, you found any of the tips useful, especially, leave a like, maybe subscribe to the channel. I may or may not make some gameplay videos in the future. If you'd like to see that, you'd like to see sort of showing some of these weird techniques that we've invented, go ahead and leave that in the comments as well. We'll gladly do so if anyone wants a guide on any Pokemon, except the ones we mentioned we're not the most proficient in, we'll be able to probably make the best guide on YouTube. So there's that, but we don't necessarily want to make every single mon. So if you want to ask, good things come to those who ask, as they say. And yeah, that's going to be all for today. So I hope you enjoyed.